Welcome back. For Chapter 9 Video 4, we're going to be going through double declining balance depreciation. So keep in mind I'm going to go through it a couple different ways. This is going to be the longest video for Chapter 9 because this is probably the most involved and difficult topic in Chapter 9. In my experience, students have the most trouble with double declining balance, definitely compared to the other two methods. So for our scenario, we're back here. Our example, vehicle purchase for $10,000, residual value of $1,000, estimated life 5 years. What's different now than what we did before? Well, compared to our straight line example, there's no different. I actually cut and pasted this directly from that slide. So there's really no difference in terms of the information presented between straight line and double declining balance. It uses exactly the same factors as straight line, but it is very different from straight line. And you'll see that shortly. Again, in my opinion, some of the reasons why students get confused on double declining balance is because it is kind of the odd man out. It is different than the other two methods. Let's get into the formula and I'll hopefully guide you through some of the potential roadblocks. So here's our formula for double declining balance. We take the cost minus accumulated depreciation times 2 divided by the useful life. So when we say double declining balance, the double up here references this. Okay. So if you move on to intermediate accounting, you'll see there's some different ways to do this. You can have like 1.5 times, and there's other ways to do this. But for our purposes, it's called double declining balance because of this times 2 that's in every formula. And keep in mind, it's cost minus accumulated depreciation, not residual value. Notice the word residual value doesn't appear anywhere in this formula. We'll get to the residual value, we'll talk about it, but with double declining balance, we actually get to it at the end. For both units of production and straight line, the residual value is there right up top, right in the beginning, that very first formula. Looking at an example, here, this example here, vehicle purchase for $10,000, residual value $1,000, useful life. This is where students can get thrown off right off the bat. Cost minus accumulated depreciation. I think one reason why students go to that minus 1,000, minus residual value, even though you're not supposed to here, is because they're not comfortable subtracting by nothing, which is what we do in the first year of double declining balance every time, is we subtract 0. Because at the beginning of the life of the asset, there's always 0. Accumulated depreciation always starts at 0 and then goes up every year. So our accumulated depreciation is going to be going up every year. As a result, our depreciation is going to be declining, hence the name, double declining balance. Our depreciation is going to be declining every year. And so we're going to start with a big number for depreciation, and it's going to go down and down and down and down until we're done depreciating. Let's look at an example. Year 1, using our same cost from before of $10,000. Accumulated depreciation right now is 0. Take that times 2 divided by 5 years. Gives us year 1 double declining balance depreciation of $4,000. Now, before we go in and start talking about year 2, it's helpful to look and say, well, accumulated depreciation was 0. What's accumulated depreciation now? Well, we just had $4,000 of depreciation, so our accumulated depreciation is now going to be $4,000. You can see cost minus accumulated depreciation, which is $4,000. That number from up here comes down here, times 2 over 5 is $2,400. So again, our accumulated depreciation for year 1 is 0, and then we depreciate $4,000, and then that number gets carried forward. Now, one thing to note, and where students get confused a lot in doing double declining balance, is the accumulated depreciation number must continue to go up every single year. It doesn't just go up one year and then go down the next, because what a lot of students do is they think, okay, so in year 2 I used year 1 depreciation, and so in year 3 I'm going to want to use year 2 depreciation. No, you don't do that. You use the sum of all the previous depreciation. We did that in year 1 with 0, and then in year 2 was here. So in year 3, I'm going to use the sum of this and this, giving me $6,400. So in year 3, it's $10,000 minus $6,400 times 2 over 5, giving me depreciation of $1,440. And then in year 4, which is going to come up here in a second, we add that $1,440 in to get to our new accumulated depreciation of $7,840. Again, times 2 over 5 is $864. So you can see there's kind of a flow and a system and a way this kind of operates. And you have to remember, it's not the previous year's depreciation, it's all the depreciation from all the years that have occurred. Now, the last year of double declining balance is tricky because you don't follow the formula. The book value always has to be higher than residual value. I'm going to remind you what book value is shortly. My suggestion for double declining balance, especially if you have to depreciate it all the way to the end, if you're just doing a year or two, maybe you don't need to do a depreciation schedule. But if you're going to do the full life of the asset, my recommendation is do a depreciation schedule, and I'm just about to show you how to do that. Reminder before we get started, the book value is cost minus accumulated depreciation. Cost minus accumulated depreciation is book value. And so if I look back at my definition of double declining balance, my formula, it's cost minus accumulated depreciation. So I could have, in that previous slide, just put book value in that formula. Actually, that's probably what I would prefer to do, but the formula I'm giving you is the one in the textbook. I want to make sure that I'm being consistent as much as I can between the textbook, but you can just go book value times 2 over the useful life. That also works. And so again, this book value here is referencing this. The cost minus the accumulated depreciation must always be higher or equal to the residual value. All right, let's get into it here. Let's show. So again, I'm going to show a depreciation schedule. I'm just going to build this thing up from the top down, basically, showing how to fill this thing out. And again, you don't have to do this exactly this way. You don't have to do this on every problem. You don't have to do this at all. If you watch this and think, that's a waste of time, that's fine. I do have students that I show this to, and they're like, I want to do it the other way. No problem. If you're getting the answer correct, I want you to keep doing it that way because I want you to get the right answer. Also keep in mind, as you move forward to your worksheets, you're not always going to see this depreciation schedule presented this way. Your text might change this around. Your homework might change this around. Your exam is not going to have this schedule on it. So don't fall in love with this schedule expecting it to be on the exam. It's not going to be on the exam, but I do think it can be helpful. Some form of this schedule, I believe, can be helpful as you complete these double declining balance problems all the way to the end. All right, let's show you how it works. So at purchase, you could call this purchase, acquisition, year 0, lots of different ways to present this, but this is where we are when we buy the truck or buy the vehicle. The cost is $10,000, the book value on day 1 is $10,000. So you can think about this column is kind of like your beginning of the year book value, and this is kind of like your end of the year book value, and this is basically summarizing the day we bought the truck. Year 1 rolls around, and there's our same formula from year 1. You can see we have our depreciation expense here, which increases our accumulated depreciation to $4,000 and decreases our book value to $6,000. Again, this is the exact same formula we did a little bit ago. Moving on to year 2, we take our $6,000 in book value that was here, move it down to here, take that amount times 2 over 5 gives us $2,400. Add these two numbers together to get to this number. Remember, this is the accumulated depreciation. How much total depreciation have we had so far for this asset at $6,400, leaving us a new book value. Remember, the book value is the cost. Hello, cost over here, minus accumulated depreciation here is book value $3,600. Year 3, book value of $3,600 gives us depreciation of $1,440, increases our accumulated depreciation, decreases your book value. Again, it's called double declining balance. Look what's happened to our depreciation every year. Started out humongous, lower, lower. Year 3, there's our formula. Again, that summarizes the yellow number here. We should be good to go. Once you practice this, it should be somewhat similar. They're all kind of similar to each other. You just kind of get the flow for it. The tricky part is at the end. Here's where we're looking at year 4, which obviously those numbers came from the previous formulas we did, and year 5, which I've left completely blank here. Now, the way I recommend doing this is to do this formula. Find the ending book value from the prior year, in this case $1,296, subtract the estimated residual value or salvage value, and then come up with the final year of depreciation. Your formula is going to look like this in action. This is telling you how much depreciation expense you need in that last year. I need $296 of depreciation. Well, if I do that, $296 of depreciation here leads me to an accumulated depreciation of $9,000 and a book value of $1,000, which is how we know we're done. That's how we know we're done. Now, sometimes when I do this, I'll go backwards and I'll start here at the book value of $1,000 and then say, okay, so my accumulated depreciation has to be $9,000, and then so this number has to be $296 based on this previous accumulated depreciation. Either way, as long as you get the right answer, keep going. That's the key. You're not going to have to do a ton of fully depreciated double declining balance assets, but you will need to do some of them. And so be ready and able to do this last step. It's always in the last year of double declining balance that you have to do this funky step. The formula won't work in the last year. And one last thing before we get to our worksheet. What I did was I took all the data from the 3 examples I just kind of made up, the double declining balance, units of production, and straight line, and I graphed them. And so you can see, obviously, the reason why straight line, which is our orange line here, the reason it's called straight line is because if you graph it, it's a straight line. That's why it's called straight line. Double declining balance starts up here and goes down, 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 down. And then units of production is kind of all over the place. That's about what you'd expect with units of production. It isn't like your weighted average in our inventory FIFO LIFO weighted average chapter where the weighted average was always in the middle. It's not going to work like that. Units of production is going to be all over the place. Some years higher, some years lower than the different methods. But straight line is always the same every year. And declining balance, double declining balance always starts higher than straight line and then ends up much lower than straight line. Those are things you can always rest on. For worksheet 4, where you're doing double declining balance in depreciation, it's a full, I've got a full depreciation schedule listed there. It's not in the same order. I kind of move the columns around. Hopefully, I mean, again, it's really kind of up to you how you want to do it. But get after that problem, work on it. Talk to your instructor if you have questions. Don't forget to take a break. This was a long video as promised. And so even after you work this problem, you're probably 30 minutes in, so take a break afterwards. Come back for video 5. Good luck.